Welcome to a presentation of my free visual grid calculator, which I created as a companion to my magazine planning app Page Tatin. The free visual grid calculator should help you to create layout grids with columns and rows and also a baseline grid. Let's have a look at all the settings. First of all, you can select the page format. The default is A4 with 210 by 297 millimeters. You can swap the portrait or landscape format. You can also set it to single pages. Let's have a look at the drop-down menu. We have the print formats from A3 to A6, then also some US sizes, also legal size. And you can also set a custom size where you can input your own width and height into the form. Then for web applications, we have Full HD with 1920 by 1080. It looks like this. And then also some mobile formats like iPhone Pro Max or Android Standard. I'll switch it back to A4. Then you can select the measurements you would like to work in, like millimeters, points, inches or pixels. I'll go back to millimeters. And then you start designing your page content area. We have the margins with top, bottom, outer and inner. Outer and inner is of course if you have double pages or a spread. If you switch to single page, then you have a left and a right margin. So these are the default settings with 15 millimeters and 20 millimeters at the top and bottom, and the outer and inner margins with 15 and 20 millimeters. Once you start changing it, you can see that here on the right side it's adapting accordingly, and you get all the measurements also here and the top and on the sides. Then for the grid, you can choose to set columns. So for instance, if you want to have a 6-column grid, you can dial it in here. Also the gutter, the measurements are always relating to what you have set up here. So in this case, the gutter is 5 millimeters, which is also shown here at the top. Then especially for print publications, you sometimes also want to have rows to have your layout grid in a more modular fashion. And now let's add some rows as well. Maybe let's also add 6 rows. And you can see these are also added here. Lots of designers prefer to work with a square grid as well. So maybe let's add 2 more to have 8 rows or even 9. So we are almost square, but not exactly. And square modules are mostly hard to calculate because you have to consider the margins as well. And for this case, I have a button where you can just with one click create a square grid. I offer 2 options. You can keep the top margin, which looks like this. Then it adjusts the bottom and now you have the square grid here. Or you can distribute the margins after a ratio you can dial in. So for instance, let's again change maybe the bottom margin to 20 just for the sake of demonstration. And now I want to distribute the margins 3:4 ratio and just click the button. And then you can see we have adjusted the top and the bottom margin accordingly. If it's a square grid, then it's in orange. If not, let's set that back maybe to 30. Then you can see it's in a dark blue. You always get shown the page content area, which in this case is 170 by 250 and a little bit. If you want to implement the baseline grid, you can do that here at the bottom. So first of all, let's show the baseline grid with this checkbox. We can also tell the web app if it starts at the page or at the margins, which looks like this. And you can even define an offset. So maybe if you want to start 10 millimeters from the margin, then just put it in here and it starts 10 millimeters from the margins. I put in 20 so you can see it more clearly. What you can also do is set your increments. Currently it's 5 millimeters. So let's say you want to have an increment of 12 points. You can also type in 12 and points and it will calculate according to what you have set here in the top. So at the moment it's 4.233 millimeters. The free grid calculator is offered in English and German, which you can switch here. So now you have the German language. And here you have the English language. Here at the bottom, you can choose to show the measurements or not, just for a quick visual reference. and also turn on or turn off the baseline grid. On the right you have layout units. Here you can see much better how your columns are relating to each other. So for instance, with a 6-column grid, 3 units of 2 columns or 2 units of 3 columns each. And then you can also see how other layout units are relating to each other. So I turn this off again. And now also for the exciting part, it's always nice to have this calculated, but in real life we also want to use that kind of grid, and for that I implemented an export IDML button. So let's export it to the desktop, and it will name it according to what you have set in the page format. It has been named grid 210 by 297 millimeters. So now we have it on the desktop, and now we can have a look at InDesign. IDML is the InDesign markup language document format and exchange format for lower versions of InDesign. I will open the IDML file, and you can see the double pages have already been honored. So let's jump to the parent page and take a look what has come over from the IDML file. So we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns, and our rows have been identified as a guide grid. You can also see that the baseline grid is here. So when we go to the settings, the baseline grid is exactly as we defined it in the web app. So let's open the file in the current version of Affinity. And here you can already see that everything that we set in the web app is also here. So let's get rid of the baseline grid. There you can see we have all our defined rows and the 6 columns. Let's also open the IDML file in Affinity Publisher version 2. And going to the parent pages, let's also turn off the baseline grid and let's go to the guides. So just let's make that a little bit darker. Then we can also see here in Affinity Publisher 2 that we have our rows and columns